June the 8th, 2024. Guys, you just saw a powerful solar flare. They're saying it was an M9.7, but the charts say it's an X, and it's very clearly to me an X, and we'll look at that. But what has happened is that sunspot in the bottom right is the one that, on the last rotation around the sun, it gave us all the X flares. Then as it reemerged on the left side of the image where you see the new sunspots coming across here, we had a couple of X flares that were very strong. Then it died down into some medium M flares that were so fast that they weren't really throwing out any coronal mass ejections. We were very fortunate. This sunspot right here, if there was a direct impact on our planet, I think from what comes off of that X flare, we would be in trouble. We're going to get a side glancing blow from it, but let's just kind of stop this and take a closer look at it. Again, we were very fortunate that this thing had passed the direct Earth-facing contact. Watch. Here's your X flare. This is the flare. It throws out a CME to the side and then one up and to the right. And when you look, and we were going to do that, look at Soho Lascaux 3 and 2, you'll see that it was a full halo, and it's traveling so fast that almost immediately, and this happened about 8 o'clock this morning East Coast time, just after midnight Universal time. So we, again, very fortunate it was not directly Earth-facing, but guys, check this out. I'm going to just kind of play it back and forth. Look at the amount of energy that went out the top up there. Now we have that full halo CME, glancing blow. The stereo A satellite, which is in Earth's orbit, but just in front of the Earth, is going to take a direct hit from this CME. Look at that, guys. Ed Dames called these kill shots. This is another camera from the SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. It's called the Colorized Magnetogram. What you're seeing from the departing sunspot that we've seen now depart twice is the different colors in there, and that's what gives it its the arc ability, like the positive and negative arcing that causes these explosions. Now, it appears that we're pretty much moving into the magnetic pole shift of the sun, which that happens every 11.8 years or so, matches the solar cycles and the orbit of Jupiter. But notice that in the southern hemisphere, and that's what indicates the pole shifts, is the fact that we've got another sunspot coming around. We can see that it is at least double configured and has the ability to arc between the red and blue areas. It could become triple configured. We'll just have to keep an eye on that. Now, I want to show you something quickly before we move to the SOHO satellites. And this is from the stereo A and B satellites that we've talked about for years. They're really past their lifetime. B really doesn't give you a lot of images. And when you get bombarded by year after year after year of these energized particles in these coronal mass ejection situations, guys, the graphics and everything on the cameras just corrupt. They really go down, and they're downgraded, not only by time but by impact. Here in the green dot is what's represented as our planet Earth. The sun is here. Stereo B is slightly behind us in orbit. A is slightly ahead of us. The reason I'm showing you this is when we look at the CME models that are the incoming blast, A is going to take a very hard lick. And just think about it. We're going to take not the brunt of it, but enough to get a pretty good geomagnetic storm going. So, guys, if you feel the pressure from these storms, there's one coming. Anyway, you're also going to see, I think it would be Venus, should be easing out the left side of the sun there as we go into the live stereo situation. But again, remember how close A is in front of Earth as they orbit this way. Now, we're going to go back about 3 or 4 days and look at Lascaux C2, another satellite that gives us an Earth-facing perspective of the sun. The sun is the size of that center white circle, by the way. But notice, there's your planet peeking out, how fast this satellite is overtaken by the energized particles. Look at that. Very fast. It's giving us a hint of how quickly the solar wind speed will be involved with this coronal mass ejection when we watch it. And the sun is the size of that center white circle. The disk is blocking the sun on the satellite so that we can see around the edges. Unlike the SDO, that we saw earlier, it's filtered down so we can see the sun. This is not really filtered that much, but it travels so fast. We'll watch it one more time. There's your planet, bottom right. Bam, and a tremendous amount of energy. Again, I think that would qualify as a kill shot, and stereo A is going to take a very hard punch. Same satellite, different camera, gives us a much wider perspective. Same 3 or 4 day period here as we come up into the 8th. That's the 6th. Notice it's been quiet. Like I said, as this thing was in front of us, it was much quieter. There's Jupiter coming on the right. But guys, that's a very powerful burst. Again, same satellite, so it overtakes it with the energized particles in the same amount of time, which is very fast. And it happened, I think, just after midnight on the 8th. Watch your timestamp at the bottom. And it's there. It's coming very quickly. Let's take a look at the actual models of this thing. Now, if you take a look at the chart, this is our GOES X-ray flux, and this is telling you the strength of the flares. Notice it touched and went just slightly over this X-ray mark right here, and this is the GOES 18 long satellite. Now, they're calling it like an M9.7, guys, but it's clearly across the line when you go to this correct scale. So I don't know where they get the numbers, but it's obvious to me. I've read these charts for a long time, and any M flare would not touch that line right there. You see it? That's M. This is C, M. And here we clearly have it. It's almost like it kind of rounded off right there. But it's close enough to me that much power difference is not going to matter because, again, you saw what launched off that sun, and you clearly saw the X-flare signature there. So, again, that's their numbers. And you can see when it happened, guys, the Atlantic Ocean right there. See that? That is where the ionization layer was, what they call it, the D-layer absorption. It's a blackout, communications, ham radio, military communications, satellite communications, temporarily blackout. And they're saying it was an M9.7 from this sunspot, 3697 right there. Again, here it may look like it, but if you click here, you'll go to the first chart I showed you, and it's a little more detail. Anyway, still a 25% chance of an X-flare, 75% chance of more M-flares. Now, I'm going to play this thing through, but you'll see that I've got it stopped right here at the impact point of Earth. Earth is in the green line. Stereo A, which is the red dot slightly in front of Earth, that I said was going to take a very hard brunt of this explosion, is here, and you can see the difference. Earth plasma density, that's the thickness of it, how strong it is going to be close to maybe 20, maybe 30. That's in centimeters cubed. We've seen them higher than that, but still a good lick. Stereo A, guys, is going to take it hard. Look at that. Up around 60. And again, that's the thickness of the energy wave or the cloud of energy that's coming. And it's going to get there slightly quicker because of the curvature of this orbit right there. Again, Earth is green, A is red, and stereo behind is blue, and that's represented in the blue line. It gets hit last, and it's not as strong as the one that's hitting our planet. Not much weaker, but it's kind of getting the tail whip of that. But here, the Stereo A satellite, we're going to see solar wind speeds approaching 700 kilometers per second, well over 1 million miles an hour. But notice right here where the Stereo A is in the red dot. That black section of the CME, that is that wad of energy, guys. It's much larger than our planet. Just look at it on the scale there. And again, that's what Ed Dames would call a kill shot. That would knock out the electronics on this planet, knock out a lot of satellites. That much density, concentrated. You saw it, and you see how fast it's traveling. You can tell that when we play this through, and how it almost looks like there's no event going to happen. Suddenly it happens. And then this timing, guys, on the 10th, it will be, that's at 0600 hours. That will be at midnight tomorrow night on the East Coast. This is universal time. So you'd be at 0000 hours on the 9th tomorrow night at midnight. East Coast is when we should start seeing the impact of this. Let's play it all the way through. We'll let it pass through. Again, the black area is the strongest, most dense section of it, and you saw a visual of how intense it was, how concentrated. Almost like nothing's going to happen. Watch. Look how close we're getting to the event. Then we see it. And that right there gets then Earth, and then stereo B behind it right there. Watch it one more time come through. Again, if you were just watching, you say it's mostly a non-event, and then suddenly, there it is. That's how it's going to creep up on us. I think that the timing of all of this is controlled by our Father in heaven. The sun is. I don't think man has any idea of how to control it. And we know that the angels are mentioned, the fourth angel, in pouring out a vial upon the sun. We got a bow shot and a stern shot. We got one as it was coming around the left side of strong flares. It calmed down as it went past us, and we were full broadside to it. Now as it's parting, we're not going to get a direct hit from it, but we are going to get a geomagnetic storm. By the way, guys, all of these links are on our website at bpearthwatch.com, including this one. This is spaceweather.com. And it's a slightly different angle the way their cameras are set up, but this is that explosion, guys, right there. And you see right there, that's kind of the leading edge of it. And you've got, again, a full coronal explosion completely surrounding the satellites, but the WAD, the main section of that, is again headed just in front of our planet. It says a geomagnetic storm watch. NOAA forecasters say that the G2 class geomagnetic storms are possible on G10th when a CME launch by today's M9.7 flare is expected to hit Earth. The CME is bright and massive. It says a direct hit would probably cause a severe geomagnetic storm. However, this will be just a glancing blow. Solar flare and hard radiation storms, what they're saying here. AR 3664 just did it again. The record-setting active region produced another very strong flare on June 8th, hurling a massive plume of plasma into space. Again, guys, it's like it paused. The creator of this universe was not ready to take down a large portion of the grid. They're saying that if it had been directly towards us, it could be another G4 or G5 geomagnetic storm. But guys, that plasma cloud is stronger than what we saw during that storm. It says this was a category 9.7, only percentage points from X class. And again, when they get on the edge, the satellites don't pick up the true energy. But guys, you saw the chart where it was overlapping the X line. It said radiation from the flare ionized the top of Earth's atmosphere, causing a deep shortwave blackout across the western Pacific. The sunspot is currently located in a region of the sun that is magnetically well connected to Earth. We talked about that before, guys. There's sections of the sun that is attached. There's a section that a plasma tube that's almost invisible to the eye, satellites can pick up the energy, is connected to all the planets, like ropes going out from a center post on a merry-go-round. And the one that we're talking about here is called the Earth-Sun connection. It's a large plasma tube that connects the sun to our planet, and it's almost as big as our planet. Every 8.2 minutes, plasma energy travels through that plasma tube to our planet, not just CMEs and things like that. It is an 8.2 minute or 8 minute 2 second pulse continuously. Several times it's happened as you're watching this video. But this is different. It's slightly, it's out of that normal range. But because of that, and the reason I'm talking about it, and probably the reason that they're talking about it, is that sunspot hit that connection point. That will always trigger it. Maybe when we saw the ones on the left side, it was Mercury or Venus. On the right side, another planet. You never know, but these connection points are critical. They used to have very good charts of them up, but it's getting harder and harder now to find that information when it used to be very easy to find. Now, you may have seen this chart before. It's also on space weather. But it's talking about the beginning of solar cycle 25, right here at the point of this red area. And this goes back to 2022, but just remember are getting closer to the peak of solar cycle 25 2 years later. But what you're seeing is measurements of radiation that's in our upper atmosphere. They'll launch these balloons and they measure it. And it's called stratospheric radiation. And why is it declining here in solar cycle 25? See that? And this thing can be very dangerous to you, especially if you do a lot of flights on commercial airlines up at higher elevations. But you can feel it here when you walk outside, and it burns your skin in very few minutes. But why is it declining, guys? It's because what happens is we see the sunspots increase as the solar cycle gets closer to peaking. You have more and more high solar wind activity. In other words, it's sweeping that radiation that normally, under normal solar conditions, which we know is just over 300 kilometers per second in the solar wind speed, at that speed, it just builds up. And as the sunspots get weaker and weaker, like coming out of this peak was coming out of solar cycle 24, then that stratospheric radiation was at its peak. Now the solar winds are stripping it back, and that's what you're seeing in this chart. But what's important is what this stuff causes and what people feel this especially during a geomagnetic storm. And the article starts out, who cares? Cosmic rays are surprisingly down-to-earth form of space weather. You should care. They can alter the chemistry of the atmosphere, triggering lightning and penetrate commercial airplanes. According to a study from the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, crews of aircraft have higher rates of cancer than the general population. So the more you fly, the more you are subjected to this stratospheric radiation. Here's a very important part. The researchers, and I'm going to link to this, and you can read the different articles for yourself. The researchers listed cosmic rays, irregular sleep habits, and chemical contaminants as leading risk factors. A number of controversial studies, there's 4 listed there, go even further, linking cosmic rays with cardiac arrhythmias and sudden cardiac death. Guys, when you feel it, it's not in your mind. This stuff can be very dangerous. And that's, I can't help but saying it's sad. During the D-Day celebration that's been going on over in Europe, one of the last remaining veterans of World War II and of the invasion there at Normandy, of which my father was one, but he passed away on that plane on the way. And he was, I think, very close to 100 years old. I'm not exactly sure. I read the article a couple of days ago. It's sad, but he's with our father now. But he more than likely, when the Lord took him, he may have been somewhere he wanted to be. Maybe he enjoyed flying. I try to think of the positive things about it. Maybe he's up and free and back like the old days. Who knows? But at that height, you are subjected to this type of problems as far as in the airplane, but on the ground, guys. It's what they're talking about with these 4 studies with the cardiac arrhythmias and the cardiac death. So, again, don't let anybody tell you that it's nonsense that you feel these, because it is not. It happens, and it's been happening a long time. Now, another thing I want to say is, guys, in the video yesterday, if you don't think that there's problems with where the sun's setting, you should go read the hundreds and hundreds of comments in that video when that's all they talk about. Hundreds of people are confirming it and are stating it, the fact that they have noticed that the sun is setting further to the northwest than it is to the true west. And we know that the sun has a different pattern for winter and summer. That's not exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing the fact that the earth is tilted. Now, if you put it in perspective, imagine the earth is to your right in a ball, the sun's to your left, and the earth is slightly tilted. I think it's 23 degrees, 23.4 degrees or something like that to the sun. That's why we have our seasons, right? It's a slight tilt there. But it would have to, if the sun's higher in the sky and setting more to the northwest than it is the west, then that means the Earth is tilted down towards the sun or bowed towards it. Why would it do that? Why would it do it so quickly? I've noticed it. People said they've noticed it the last 2 or 3 years. But this year, guys, I had to rotate an extra foot on my panels. I don't even know how to measure that in degrees. I'd have to set it up and try to figure that out. But it's not inches on the horizon. If my pine trees, some of them that are maybe 100 yards behind my home, they're 80 footers, big trees. So if I were to look 300 yards away, some of you guys may know how to do the math on this, and I could take those 2 points. They are at least 100 yards apart, those trees, from where it was setting to where it is now. So you got 300 feet probably from me, and then there are another 300 feet apart of where it's setting. But again, the Earth would have to be tilting further than that 23 degrees, towards the sun. Now, some of the theories about how this could occur goes back, and one of them is the fact that I have my own theory, but it may be a combination of two. Many of the scientists, and again it goes back several decades, think that shifts like this would be caused if you have heating, which we do, and the global ice caps start to melt. Then instead of it being a balanced top with weight at the top, and you start having that ice melt and the oceans absorb some of that, then that tilt could be changing. In other words, the balance of your spinning top, the Earth, is out of whack. Now, not only that, but another theory, and this is the one that I think is the most likely, and again, it could be a combination, is magma movement. Now, if you have a lot of heating going on, you're seeing volcanoes going off everywhere, there's magma movement. Why? Because it's heating up the core of the planet. The lines of force that you see that we call our shields go through our planet, creating ground field currents and everything else, but they heat the magma. And when that magma heats and rises, it could be dormant in a chamber very deep in the Earth. Suddenly we're going into a cycle where we're seeing volcanoes go off that haven't gone off in a long time. Well, that is producing massive amount of weight. We're talking about molten rocks, iron, whatever's in volcanic lava, glass, whatever. But all that weight is coming from the center or close to the center to the outside edges. Make sense to you? It's like adding weight to one section of a spinning top. It's going to start leaning in that direction. So it could be, again, part of the fact that ice caps do melt. We're seeing retreats because we see ice ages. We see the younger dryas, and now we're seeing the heat build up here. But then the magma, and also what have we been talking about in that 13,000-year cycle? The influence of things outside of this solar system, very powerful things like in this case is more than likely what we talked about and why we think they hid the information on Voyager 1 and 2 is the fact that they spotted not only what they were calling Planet 9 or Planet X, but a dark star past it. Then they were shut down and all the records almost were destroyed. And they quit talking about it. They put hundreds of scientists, like climate scientists, control people that for $1 will say anything, in on top of this. And so every article around the world suddenly come out, we were just speculating, there was really not a Planet X. But they were going to leave that alone until they found that dark star that could very well be the twin of our star. Whether or not it is, it doesn't matter. If it's affecting our planet and our solar system, then we talked about getting close to the end of the 13,000-year cycle. 26,000 years ago, the Ice Age. 13,000 years ago, it almost came back with the younger dryas during that heating period. But I think, and most people are starting to agree, That changed because of comet impacts on the planet. Not only that, one scientist that I was reading about talked about the comet impacts making the Earth wobble. Thousands of years ago, knocked it almost 90 degrees. And we're seeing things happen. We're seeing heating coming up. In one chart I showed you about a month ago, that the magnetic poles, not the physical poles that we're talking about, but the magnetic poles were moving back very close to center in the last 50 years, 2 or 3,000 miles. But this physical pole shift could very well be with magma rushing to the core, or to the surface, creating an imbalance, and also the ice caps melting and creating an imbalance. Now, this is just an illustration, but let's look at it just for reference. And you see the very center of the Earth is very hot, and then your magma comes from chambers around that and rises to the surface. In the scenario you're seeing, it looks fairly balanced, right? And you should have a pretty good rotation. But if you go back, and there's very good preachers that have taught about the other Earth ages and how the Earth once rotated in a very smooth rotation, and the seasons stayed the same. It was cold in the north and things like that, but the seasons were very pleasant. It wasn't great changes, and the storms and stuff like that were not happening. But now it's being disrupted. Let me show you another image, and maybe you will understand what I'm saying. Now, this article, guys, it's from Volcano Cafe, but it's talking about El Hierro, and that was the volcano on the Canary Islands that we watched a few years ago, and the physics of magma chambers. Now, that's not what I'm going to talk about because it's relevant to all of them, but this illustration is exactly what I'm talking about. The dots are indicating the surface of the planet. This is the core. And you've got volcanoes in Iceland, see right there. You've got volcanoes, huge volcanoes under the Antarctic. And you've got them, more than likely, this one or this one would be one of the El Hierro, the Canary Islands coming out of the Mediterranean Sea. And you can see in Russia, different places. But when you've got the lava is settled, a lot of these chambers are probably cooled in giant hollow chambers until magma rises, that were created over millions of years ago and cooled. You've seen it, and they create caves that are still, you can find those on our planet too. But then suddenly heat starts bombarding the surface in the atmosphere, and the magma starts rising up. And we know it is now exploding in Iceland, right? And also in Italy. Then what happens? All the weight of that molten rock, lava, and they're saying now a lot of it, guys, more than half is crystals that's melting in this lava core. But anyway, when all that weight gets up here, what happens? The Earth, and we're seeing it now with Iceland, is heavier at that point. Is the Iceland volcanoes at the tip of the Mid-Atlantic Range causing this tilt that you and I are seeing? We know it's happened. You guys, again, I should do a video and read from the hundreds of comments from yesterday's video about people noticing the changes of where the sun's setting, way out of whack. But you do that, guys. Go and look. It's eye-opening that 99.9% of the comments from that video talk about people's experience. And the last time I looked, maybe 16,000 folks had watched it. And there's not really anybody, except for a couple of flat earthers, arguing about it. And I'm just going to say this about the flat earth. I really don't like to bend down that low, but they talk about, it's in the Bible, that it's flat, that the firmament was above. But guys, what you got to realize about that is when you quote the Bible, especially when you're talking about a flat earth, it kills me to even mention it, to be honest with you. But guys, there's oceans below the surface. There's firmament above that. They have found these massive lakes under the surface of the earth. And what happened during the flood? It rained 40 days and not 40 nights, but the earth opened up. The water came up out of the earth also. So the firmament was above that body of water. Don't get lost in that. And really it doesn't matter. But when it gets to a level that is just beyond my comprehension of, I can't even say it without insulting people, so I'm just going to leave it alone. But it's hard to talk about it. Have you ever flown at 33,000 feet? I have. You can see the curvature of the planet. Come on, guys. Don't get hung up on something like that. You're going to miss the best of the creation that God has given us, that we look through our solar system and our universe. And you think it's a glass wall, then here's what I'm going to do. I want you to come into the comments, and I'm not going to block anybody. I'm not going to say anything bad about you. Come in if you believe in flat earth, and I want you to tell me and my listeners, where does if it's a dome over the planet, it's flat, and the sun is artificial light, and moon's artificial light, where are the edges of the dome? What cities are they near? What oceans are they near? Where are they located? Or does the ocean just run off like massive waterfalls in some fairy tale? Should tell me one place on earth that it ends. One place. I think that'll end it. But no, you know how some people get stuck on an idea, and with the younger generation being taught who knows what, there's I don't know why they even brought that up and started teaching people that. Was it to divert you away from what's really going on? Think about that, guys. But just tell me where the dome ends, and so we can go visit it and take a look and take some pictures, okay? You probably have some, since you believe that. It's a heads up. Be safe.